नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर वासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. We have been discussing from the fifth chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, along with the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sri Sarartha Varshini commentary. So, in this fifth chapter, I'll do a quick recap of what we have seen till now. In the third chapter and in the fourth chapter, Krishna spoke about practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga and how this Nishkama Karma Yoga gradually evolves into Jnana. When by practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga, when the heart becomes purified, naturally one develops Jnana. This is what towards the end of fourth chapter, Krishna glorified that Jnana. Nahi Jnanena sadrisham pavitram yada vidyate iha vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsiddhir kalenatmani vindati. So like that, in so many verses, he glorifies Jnana, which is born out of a practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga. So, but at the same time, towards the end of that chapter, after glorifying Jnana, again Krishna asks Arjuna to fight. Chitvainam samshayam yogam attishtottishta bharata. Like that he says, So, therefore, again, Arjuna is not very clear because he thinks that Jnana means, give up all kinds of karma, give up all kinds of karma. So why did you glorify Jnana if you want me to do karma? So again, a very similar question which Arjuna got in the beginning of third chapter. Here Arjuna gets here at this chapter. So when he asked this question in the third chapter, that Vyamishrenaiva vakyena buddhim mohe sivame tadekam vada nischitya ena shreyoham apniyan. Arjuna, O Krishna, if you have glorified Jnana, then I thought you want me to do Jnana, but you are asking me to do karma. So your instructions are very equivocal. It's not very clear. So can you tell me very clearly what you want me to do? This is what Arjuna asked Krishna in the beginning of the third chapter. Krishna said, Arjuna, lokesmin vividanishta pura prokta mayanaga jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. So he said, Arjuna, understand that there are two kinds of people. People with two different types of qualification. Some people are qualified for karma, some people are qualified for jnana. So one who is qualified for karma should practice karma. One who is qualified for jnana should practice jnana. Because you are qualified for karma, I asked you to practice karma. Okay, because the qualification of jnana is very high. Yastu atmaratireva syad atmatriptascha manava atmanyeva hi santushtas tasya karyam na vidyate. So one who is qualified for jnana, his heart is so pure that he has absolutely no material desires and he is completely satisfied in pursuing self-realization. And only activities of self-realization will give him happiness. Nothing else will give him happiness or satisfaction. So such a person is qualified to practice jnana by giving up karma. Tasmad asaktah satatam karyam karma samachara. Asakto hi acharan karma param apnoti purusha. Therefore, Arjuna, because you do not have these qualifications, therefore I asked you to perform. Therefore, I asked you to perform karma. Yes, it is true that I did glorify the path of jnana. I did tell you that jnana is superior to karma, but that does not mean that anyone can practice jnana. It needs a qualification, and that qualification is purification of heart. Okay. So here Arjuna has a similar question. He says, Sanyasam karmanam Krishna punar yogam shamsasi. Yet Shreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunishchitam. So he says, Sanyasam karmanam Krishna punar yogam cha samsasi. Oh Krishna, you seem to be praising karma sannyas, giving up karma, and at the same time, you seem to be glorifying karma yoga. So you are glorifying both. Tad me bruhi sunishchitam yat shreya etayorikam. Please tell me very clearly, of the two, which is better? Is karma sannyas better or karma yoga better? So karma sannyas means jnana yoga. Sannyas, what we call as sannyas, that is jnana yoga, where one gives up one's practice of um, varna dharma, you know, Kshatriya, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, that those activities are completely given up by that person, right? And so sannyas means karma sannyas, okay, and yoga means karma yoga, nishkama karma yoga. So which one of the two is better? Arjuna is asking. Okay, so here I think we did discuss that. If you remember, I explained this whole thing. When people have material desires, they practice first Sakama Karma Yoga to fulfill their material desires. And gradually, because they are trying to fulfill their material desires by following the Vedic path, gradually some sort of purification happens in their heart and they come to the stage of Nishkama Karma Yoga. Okay. So this Nishkama Yoga was described in the 3rd chapter and in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Right. So then when the heart becomes, then when one performs Nishkama Karma Yoga, they no longer have material desires. They have desire for liberation. So with ultimately their desire is liberation, but immediately in order to pursue liberation, one has to have a purified heart. So by practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga, by being detached from the material fruits of the Varnashrama activities, they continue practicing these Varnashrama activities, their heart becomes pure. So once the heart becomes pure, then they have 3 options. Okay. Either they can, so when their heart becomes pure, then they are qualified to pursue jnana. Jnana will naturally manifest within their heart. Tat swayam yoga samsiddhir kalenatmani vindati. As in the 4th chapter towards the end, Krishna talking about jnana, he says, Tat swayam yoga samsiddhi. This jnana, by the perfection of Nishkarma Yoga, automatically matures and it leads to jnana. Tat swayam yoga samsiddhi. Kalena atmani vindati. It manifests within the heart. Okay. But even after that jnana manifests within the heart, one need not necessarily give up practicing their Varna Dharma. They can continue practicing the duties of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And at the same time, so externally they practice their Varnashram duties, but internally they pursue meditation and Brahman. Okay. So such people, they, this is one option. The second option is they give up their practice of Varna Dharma and only practice sannyas. So this is Jnana Yoga. Or they could take up to Ashtanga Yoga where they pursue meditation. So All three of this will ultimately lead to liberation. Liberation here means Sayujya Mukti, impersonal liberation, right? So here now Krishna is, so this question has been asked by Arjuna. Krishna, what is best? Karma sannyas or karma yoga? Or jnana yoga or karma yoga? What is better? You tell me. Okay. So here in the explanation, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, in the 5th chapter, the Lord explains that karma as superior to jnana because it strengthens jnana and explains knowledge of Paramatma along with qualities such as seeing things with equal vision. Okay. So, anyways, we will discuss this a little later. So, Krishna answers this question by telling, Sannyasa karma yogascha nishreyasa karao bhav tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. Krishna says, Arjuna, both Nishkama Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, or Karma Yoga and Karma Sannyas, both are beneficial. Both can produce the highest benefit. So here, highest benefit is actually liberation. Liberation means impersonal liberation, Sayujya Mukti. Because he has not yet in Bhagavad Gita introduced bhakti in a very serious way. So there is only a comparison between karma and jnana. Okay. So he says that sannyasa karma yogascha nishreyasa karavubhav. Both renunciation of work and karma yoga produce highest benefit, which is Sayujya Mukti or liberation. Tayostu, but of the two, karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. Karma yoga is better than renunciation of karma. Okay, we saw this chart, right? So Krishna is telling this is better than this. Tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. So better practice this path because you never know if your heart is purified or not. Right? So if your heart is not purified and if you have already taken up to sannyas, we saw sannyas cannot purify the heart. Sannyas is to be taken only after the heart becomes purified by practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga. Okay. But if someone makes an error in judgment and he thinks that, oh yeah, I think my heart is very pure, now I can take up to sannyas. If he takes up to sannyas, which is jnana, but then eventually realizes after some time that, oh, my heart is not completely pure, then what happens? Because sannyas, the stage of sannyas or the practices of jnana yoga cannot purify the heart. Only the practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga can purify the heart. But he has given it up and taken up to sannyas. Now, if he gives up the sannyas and takes up to practice of his varnashrama duties or karma yoga again, he will be criticized by the society. He will be criticized by the society. But if he does not give up his jnana yoga and takes up to karma yoga, his heart will not become purified and he cannot attain liberation. So either he has to stay at the position of sannyas without undergoing any purification, or he has to give up his sannyas and take up to practice of varnashram duty and face the social backlash. So Krishna says, why deal all these things? Even if you are sure that your heart is purified, continue externally practicing your varnashrama duties while internally meditating on the Brahman. Okay. So this will also give rise to liberation. You don't have to externally give up your practice of varnashrama duties. This is what Krishna tells here. See, Arjuna, sannyasa karma yogascha, both this and this, nishreyasa karava, both can lead to liberation. but tayostu, but of the two, karma sannyasat karma yoga vishishyate. Better than this jnana yoga or karma sannyas is karma yoga or nishkama karma yoga. Here, this is nishkama karma yoga on the platform of jnana. So the difference between this nishkama karma yoga and this nishkama karma yoga is that this is nishkama karma yoga 1, this is nishkama karma yoga 2. Nishkama karma yoga 1 is nishkama karma yoga on the platform of karma, whereas nishkama karma yoga 2 is nishkama karma yoga on the platform of jnana, right? So these two are different. Okay, one who is at the platform of nishkama karma yoga 1, he cannot meditate on Brahman. He will not be able to meditate on Brahman because his heart will be filled with lot of anarthas. Whereas one who is on the platform of nishkama karma yoga 2, because his heart is already purified, even though externally he may be engaged in his varnashrama duties, he will still be able to meditate on the Brahman within. Okay, that is the difference. So Krishna says nishkama karma yoga 2 is better than jnana yoga. That is what he is telling here. Sannyasa karma yogascha nishreya sakara ubhau. Tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. So here, Srila Vishwanath Jagadagur says karma yoga is better. Even for the jnani, performing action is not at all a fault. So here action refers to varnashrama duties. Because performing action is not a fault. For a karmi to give up action is certainly a fault. For a jnani to perform varnashram duties is not a fault. Okay, because this person is also a jnani. This person is also a jnani. But even though he is a jnani, he can practice varnashrama duties. But for someone who is on the platform of nishkama karma yoga 1, to prematurely give up the duties is definitely a fault. Right. So that's what he says here. Rather, by performance of nishkama karma, the heart becomes fixed in purity. From that, jnana becomes fixed. Sometimes there may arise disturbance in the heart of a sannyasi. So, which, if he is a premature sannyasi, whose heart is not yet purified, and if he gives up his karma and takes up to sannyas, then it will lead to disturbance in the form of material desires. Okay. In order to alleviate that disturbance, is it forbidden to engage in karma? No. Disturbance in the heart really obstructs the practice of jnana, but taking up enjoyment of sense objects rather than performing nishkama karma is a real degradation. So therefore, better than, instead of on the platform of sannyas, what will happen if a person takes up to premature sannyas? Okay, so what happens to a premature sannyasi? He has material desire. So when he has material desires, and when the urge for material desires become very strong, okay, if the sannyasi gives up sannyas and takes up to varnashrama platform, there will be social backlash. The whole society will criticize him, and he will face bahishkar from the society. But what will the sannyasi do if he has material desires? And when the urge becomes very strong, he will engage in sense gratification instead of legally engage in activities of varnashram. So this is a big problem for a sannyasi. So because one can always do this mistake of taking up the premature sannyas. Therefore, Krishna says, look, forget about giving up these varnashram duties. Continue externally performing varnashram duties, even if you think internally you have become purified. Because anytime your judgment may be wrong. And if you are on the platform of jnana, to continue performing your varnashram duties is not wrong. It will not degrade you. For a jnani, while internally cultivating jnana, but externally performing varnashram duties is not a fault. But for a karmi to prematurely give up his karma is certainly a fault. That is the point that he is making here. Okay. Jyayasya nitya sannyasi yonadveshti na kankshati nirdvandvo hi mahabaho sukam bandhat pramuchyate. So he says, O Mahabaho, O mighty armed Arjuna, Saha, that person who is engaged in Nishkama Karma Yoga with pure heart. So Nishkama Karma Yoga with pure heart is Nishkama Karma Yoga type 2, where he is performing his Varnashram duties, but already he has a pure heart, which this is on the platform of Jnana. He is performing Nishkama Karma Yoga on the platform of Jnana. So Nirdvandvaha, because his heart is purified, there is no duality within his heart, likes and dislikes. Yona dveshti na kankshati, neither hating nor desiring anything. Okay. Nitya sannyasi gyayaha. Such a person is to be known as a constant sannyasi. So even though he may be performing externally Nishkama Karma Yoga, but which means externally he may be a grihastha, but internally he is a sannyasi. Krishna says, Gyayasya nitya sannyasi. Understand, Arjuna, that he is a nitya sannyasi. Sukam bandhat pramuchyate. And such a person, without having to take up external sannyas, he can very easily be freed from the bondage. Okay. So this is glorifying a grihastha who is practicing karma on the platform of jnana. Even though he is qualified for jnana, but externally he is continuing to perform karma. So Krishna is telling, don't worry, such a person is a nitya sannyas. Because sannyas means what? Karma phala tyaga. That is sannyas. So real sannyas means one who gives up attachment to the fruits of one's action. That is real sannyas. You don't have to really give up the activities of your karma. That is what Krishna is telling here. Right? So gyayasya nitya sannyasi yonadveshti na kankshati nirdvandvo hi mahabaho sukam bandhat pramuchyate. So Srila Vishwanath Jagadakur mentioned, it should not be said that taking sannyas or taking premature sannyas, that is renouncing all duties or karma, gives liberation, and not taking sannyas does not give liberation. So one should not say that, he did not take up sannyas, so he cannot get liberation. Or he has taken up sannyas, so definitely he will get liberation. So liberation is not dependent on external sannyas. Liberation is dependent on internal sannyas. Okay. Internal sannyas means karma phala tyaga. Okay. So a person who does not take sannyas, who is a grihastha, who is addressed in this verse as a nitya sannyasi, he has a pure heart for cultivation of jnana. So he may externally practice varnashram duties, but internally he cultivates jnana. Definitely he achieves liberation. The pure-hearted person engaged in action should be known as the constant sannyasi, nitya sannyasi. He is a true warrior who conquers the city of liberation. O mighty armed Arjuna, Mahabaho. Sankhya yogau pritak balaha pravadanti na panditaha. Ekamapi astita samyak ubayor vindate phalam. Only the ignorant people, Balaha, Pravadanti, they speak Sankhya Yoga Pratak. So only ignorant people talk that Nishkama Karma Yoga type 2 is different from Jnana Yoga. Okay. Definitely Nishkama Karma Yoga type 1 is different from Jnana Yoga in the sense it is the preliminary stage of Jnana Yoga. But Nishkama Karma Yoga type 2 and Jnana Yoga are both the same in the sense both will give the same goal, which is liberation. Okay. There is no difference. There is no difference. One may externally be practicing Varnashram duties as a Grihastha while internally cultivating Jnana. One have given up the Grihastha ashram and taken up to Sannyas and internally cultivating Jnana. If both are qualified for Jnana, both these activities will lead to liberation. Right? Like that. So, Balaha, only the ignorant person speaks of Jnana and Karma Yoga as different. Na Panditaha, not the wise person. Ekamapi astita samyak ubayor vindate phalam. Performing even one of these activities completely, one attains the results of both. The result of both is liberation. Right? So, then he says, Yat Sankhyahi Prapyate Sthanam Tadyogairapi Gamyate. Ekam Sankyam cha Yogam cha Yap Pashyati sa Pashyati. He's repeating the same thing. He says, Yat Sankhyahi Prapyate Sthanam. That which goal which can be, here Sankhya refers to Jnana Yoga or Sannyas. External Sannyas. Okay. Yat Sankhyahi Prapyate Sthanam. That goal which is achieved by the path of Jnana, Tad yoga irapi gamyate, that you can achieve by Karma Yoga also. Here Karma Yoga is Nishkama Karma Yoga type 2. Type 2 means Nishkama Karma Yoga on the platform of Jnana. Okay. So yat Sankhyahi Prapyate Sthanam Tad yogairapi gamyate. Ekam Sankyam cha Yogam cha Yap Pashyati sa Pashyati. He who sees Jnana and Karma Yoga as one, he is the one who is actually seeing. Ekam Sankyam cha Yogam cha Yap Pashyati sa Pashyati. He who sees Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga as one, in the sense that their goal is one, he is really seeing. Okay. So, then in the next verse he says, Sanyasastu Mahabaho Dukkam Aptum Ayogatah Yoga Yukto Munir Brahma Nachirena Digachati. So he says, Sanyasastu Dukkam Aptum Ayogatah. So he says, if one just give me a second. So he says, Sanyasastu Mahabago Dukkam Ayogatah. So which means, if without performing Nishkama Karma Yoga, one will not get purity of heart. And without purity of heart, if one takes up to Sannyas or Jnana Yoga, then it will lead to only pain. Okay. So it will not lead to any goal. So that's what he says. Sanyasastu Dukkam Ayogatah. So without practicing Nishkama Karma Yoga and without purifying the heart, if one prematurely takes up to sannyas, it will lead to pain only. It will lead to difficulty. But Yoga Yukto Munihi. So Munihi means one who is on the platform of Jnana. And Yoga Yukta means one who is simultaneously engaged in Nishkama Karma Yoga too. But this Yoga Yukto Munihi, Brahma, liberation, na chirena, very quickly, adhigachati, he attains. Therefore, Krishna says, therefore, O Arjuna, even if you think your heart is very pure, still I would say don't give up your Varnashram duties. Because there is nothing wrong if you continue to perform your Varnashram duties. So, Sanyasastu Mahabago Dukkam Aptum Ayogatah Yoga Yukto Munirbrana Chirena Adhigachati. So, sannyas gives suffering for the jnani who cannot fix complete purity in his heart, which is a premature jnana. But karma yoga, however, gives pleasure. Okay. How? Because of not performing karma yoga, which can pacify the disturbance of the heart, the sannyas may give rise to suffering if it is accepted without proper qualification. Thus, it is said by the writers of the Vartika. Okay. He says, Pramadino bahischittaha pishunaha kalahotsukaha sannyasinopi drishyantaiva sandushitashrayaha. One sees sannyasis who are absorbed in sense gratification with evil minds, fond of arguing, who are contaminated shelters of spiritual life. This is called talking about the premature sannyasis, right? And again, the personified Vedas say, Yadinna samudharanti yatayo hridi kama jata. Member renounced order who failed to uproot the last traces of material desires in their heart, they remain impure. Why they remain impure? Because the means of purification is their Varna Dharma, and they have given up that Varna Dharma without full purification. Like that. So, this is where we ended our discussion, where Krishna speaks about the importance of continuing to perform one's Varnashrama duties even after reaching the stage of Jnana, because it is safe and easy. So this is where we ended our discussion 2 weeks back. It has been a long time. That's why I took some time to recap what we have been discussing. Before we start the next section, if there are any quick discussion points, comments, questions based on what we have discussed, you can please go ahead. Anything anyone like to share as? Yes, Ramacharya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So, does Niskam Karma Yogi also perform Jnana Yoga? Like you mentioned Niskam Karma Yoga 1 and Niskam Karma Yoga 2. One was Niskam Karma Yogi engaged in Karma Yoga, and then also Jnana Yoga. So, do they also do Jnana Yoga too?
Yeah, Nishkama Karma Yoga 1 cannot form Jnana Yoga, cannot meditate on Brahman, because his heart is still impure. But the Nishkama Karma Yogi 2 is his heart pure. Therefore, he can internally meditate on Brahman. So he can. So meditation, the internal meditation on Brahman is actually activity of Jnana Yoga only.
So, Prabhu, hearing some of the past classes, sounds like it's mostly purification that decides, or the level of desired purification decides what type of yoga one can engage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. True.
Thank you.
Correct. Anything else anyone would like to share as add before we move forward? Yes, Vahini Mataji.
Hare
Vahini.
Krishna. Yes,
Yes,
yes. So I have two questions. So first one is there's this. I had visited Uttarkashi, and I saw in Tapovan that there are some women sannyasi. So I mean, how like what is the take, like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's take on that, and if sannyas is allowed for women, and if you can elaborate on that. And second, I mean, if I can ask later or.
Yeah, first we'll take this. Can women take up sannyas? I mean, it's a matter of research. In general, no. But but definitely there may be some exceptional cases. So for this, one has to completely understand the Dharma Shastras. You will never see our acharyas elaborating too much on this, because ultimately there will be much lot of elaboration on the path of bhakti, because sannyas is not a part of bhakti, you know. So the whole thing about nishkama karma yoga or sannyas and all these things, they come in the path of gradual elevation. So they are not on the they do not come in on the path of bhakti. So therefore, you will not see such elaborations too much. Maybe there might be some places they might have spoken about it, but there will not be much this elaboration in their commentary. There will be more elaboration on bhakti. So yeah, I don't know. I am not an expert in Dharma Shastras, which describe what is the general rule and what is the rationale behind it, and what are the exceptions, and under what circumstances woman can take sannyas. Are there any exceptions for that? Bhakti Shastras will never talk about it. Only Dharma Shastras will talk about it. So because I am not an expert in Dharma Shastra, neither am I an expert in Bhakti Shastras also. But yeah, so I cannot exactly comment on that. And as far as you are asking what is Srila Vishnu Thakur's take on this, till now whatever I have read from Srila Vishnu Thakur's books, either his commentaries to Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, or his other books like Madhurya Kadambini and other such things, I have not read him commenting on this. So I don't know for sure.
Right. The second question was more related to the sannyasis falling down. So like even in ISKCON, like we can only see what we see in ISKCON right now. Like the sannyas concept we are seeing mostly in ISKCON. So and there we see sannyasis falling down, and they are on the path of bhakti. So I don't know how to take that, and but it is definitely it's kind of, it's bad for the society basically. I mean, for the name of the society, and there are so many people who get affected by it. It's just not one time thing that okay, if we see from that angle that okay, he was he's a bhakta, so maybe it's not a fall down, maybe it's just a small, like whatever, we can forgive him. But the implications that the
Societal
whole thing
implications.
creates to the society is like it's vast. People get affected by it. So even I can say about myself, like my own parents, they will start questioning that what path are you taking, so I'm just asking that, like how to take it, and how to take it in the right sense, so that it doesn't affect our bhakti, and how to understand it in the right way, because it sometimes creates a lot of confusions.
Okay, this is a very valid question. Actually, for this we have to understand, the first principle that we hear when we take up the bhakti, or one of the first principles, is Naham Vipro Nachanarapati Napi Vaishyo na Shudro Naham Varni Nacha Grihapati Na Vanasto Yatirva Kintu Prodyan Nikila Paramananda Purnamritabde Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayur Dasadasanudas. So our identification ultimately on sannyas is a material identification only. Okay. I'm not directly answering your question, but I'm going to come there. I'm just laying a platform for that. So, therefore, traditionally, in the traditional Vedic society, sannyas is given only to that person who, by perfectly practicing his Nishkama Karma Yoga, has purified his heart, and when the heart becomes purified completely, then he takes up to sannyas. Okay, so this is the traditional Vedic society. But in our case, we are not following the gradual path of varnashrama. We have directly taken up to the path of bhakti. So in bhakti, especially in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, it was only Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur who introduced sannyas mostly as a preaching strategy. That's all. So sannyas was only a preaching strategy. He did not give sannyas only to those disciples who showed exceptional purity of heart. First thing, they were only practitioners of bhakti. They were not practitioners of varnashrama. Okay, so they were not engaged in that, in those strict rituals of varna dharma. So therefore, their purification of heart was dependent on bhakti. So therefore, they were given sannyas not based on purification, but mostly he gave sannyas from the perspective of preaching, for that purpose. So first thing is, we have to understand, even Srila Prabhupada continued the same way. It's not that he had a strong evaluation process as to evaluate who was actually very purified. So the sannyas was given based on how much people were inspired and enthusiastic for preaching. So that was the consideration based on which Srila Prabhupada also gave sannyas. So there is no precedence in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. In one sense, you can say Swarup Damodar Goswami and others, but they all took sannyas from the Mayavadi line only, even including Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But in our own line, actually, there was the whole concept of Vaishnava sannyas was introduced by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur purely for the purpose of preaching. Okay, so these discussions about sannyasi and so this is quite different from the sannyas that we are talking about within ISKCON, because ideally, if you are following the traditional Vedic path, as a brahmachari, very rarely, we all know none of us are purified. So when people who show exceptional purity of heart, okay, so they directly take up to sannyas from being brahmacharis. Otherwise, the only way is accept the grahastha ashram, perform your varna dharma, purify your heart, and only then you can take up to vanaprastha and sannyas. That is the only way, right? But that kind of sannyas, the kind of sannyas that is given in our society is significantly different. It is mainly for the purpose of preaching, right? So therefore, if someone falls down, so falls down means what? We have to understand. Falling down means what? If someone succumbs to material sense gratification, right? So, well, in one sense, uh, the whole concept of sannyas itself was not given completely based on purification. So, is it impossible for such a person to come to sense gratification? No, it is definitely possible, right? So I'm not trivializing. I'm not telling that everyone can fall down, but I'm just giving a perspective actually. So when the right now in today's day and age in ISKCON, slowly these the standards are getting more and more stricter. But even then, there is no a kind of very strict benchmark in terms of purity for someone to actually take up to the position of sannyas. A very generic principles are there, but there is no very strict benchmark as such. So having said that, it is always possible. Okay. And on top of that, so what level of anartha nivritti is needed, right? So if complete anartha nivritti is needed, then one can take up to sannyas only at the stage of bhava and prema. But at the stage of bhava and prema, no one would want to take up to sannyas because they would become completely controlled by love for Krishna. So therefore, we have to understand that can a sannyasi of ISKCON succumb to sense gratification? I would say one should not be very surprised. It is possible because the principles, in one sense, the whole concept of sannyas in our sampradaya was introduced mostly as a preaching ploy. But having said that, real fall down means if someone completely gives up the practice of devotional service, that is definitely a fall down. Okay. So this, whatever I have spoken till now, is how do we see fall down or so-called fall down, right? But having said that, the societal repercussions are definitely there, right? So the society will certainly, in the general society, people will definitely, the sannyas is put on a very high pedestal. So definitely the societal repercussions will be very strong. So one has to be cool about it. That is why if you see in our sannyas ministry, nowadays, the rules are very, very strict. And, the sannyasis are monitored very, very strictly, or the sannyas candidates are monitored very, very strictly. And to get sannyas is not very easy in today's day and age, actually. So within ISKCON, so standards are definitely improving, mostly to curb the societal repercussions that may come when someone is not able to maintain those standards. I don't know if I addressed your questions, but if not, you can please let me know.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, majorly. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was helpful.
Anything else anyone would like to share as before we move forward? Purushottam Prasad, too.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandatna. Prabhuji, so Krishna is saying both are good, but it's Jnana Yoga as well as Karma Yoga. Perform either one will lead to ultimately the same result, isn't it?
Correct.
So it doesn't matter whether you're following Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga. Even in Jnana Yoga, you should be capable of surpassing duality, isn't it?
Yeah, but I clarified. Karma Yoga means Karma Yoga on the platform of Jnana, not Karma Yoga on the platform of Karma.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Prabhu, also the question raised just before. So Krishna also clarifying in 9th chapter saying that even for circumstances, a devotee may fall down, but still he has to be considered as sadhu.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Thank you.
He is considered as a sadhu on the principle of his surrender to Krishna. And why is considered as a sadhu? Because Krishna takes the responsibility of purifying and reinstating him back on the right platform. Yeah. So on that principle, we accept him as a sadhu.
But that facility is not available for a Karma Yogi or Jnana Yogi or Ashtanga Yogi, whereas for a Bhakti Yogi it is available, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you. Clear.
Anything else? Okay, let's continue then. Okay, so then Krishna in this next section is going to speak about the performance of Kama Karma Yoga. Not exact. Let's see. Okay, what he says. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyah sarvabhutatma bhutatma kurvan apina lipyate. So he says yoga yukta, one engaged in karma yoga. Karma yoga, of course, refers to Nishkama Karma Yoga. Vishuddhama, having controlled his intelligence. So here Atma refers to intelligence. Vijitatma, having controlled his mind. Here Atma refers to mind. So first Atma is intelligence. Okay. And the second Atma is mind. Okay. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma, and then jitendriyaha. So jitendriyaha means one who has controlled his senses. So his senses are controlled, his mind is controlled, his intelligence is controlled. So which means he is Nishkama Karma Yogi of type 2. So Yoga Yukto. So Yoga Yukta means he is engaged in Nishkama Karma Yoga type 2. But he is Vishuddhatma. His intelligence is controlled. Vijitatma, his mind is controlled. Jitendriya, his senses are controlled. Okay. Kurvanapi, even though he may be engaged in his Varna Dharma, his activities, na lipyate, he is not contaminated. So Arjuna, even if you think your senses are controlled, your mind is controlled, your intelligence is controlled, and your heart is completely purified. So if you are thinking, still why should I engage in my Varnashrama duty and contaminate myself? Don't worry. If your mind, intelligence, and senses are all controlled, kurvan api na lipyate, even though you may be engaged in your Varnashram duties, you will not be contaminated. Okay. And sarva bhuta atma bhutatma, and such a person is the object of love of all the living entities. Okay. So all the living entities will naturally love that person, because wherever there is detachment and non-selfishness, naturally people get attracted to such a person. Okay. So where there is attachment, there is selfishness. Wherever there is detachment, there is selflessness. And selflessness is very active. So even though such a person may be externally engaged in activities of Varnashrama, because he is showing internal detachment, all the living entities become very much attracted to such a person. So therefore, don't Arjuna, if you are a Vishuddhatma, Vijitatma, and Jitendriya, by being engaged in yoga, by being engaged in Karma Yoga, na lipyate, you will not be bound, or you will not be contaminated by action. And because of your internal detachment, all the living entities will love you. You will be the object of love of all living entities because of your detachment and subsequent selflessness. Right. So he says the Jnani he means whose heart is pure. The Jnani whose heart is pure by performing karma. Even so, here performing means Nishkama Karma Yoga type 2 is not contaminated. That is stated in this verse. The Jnanis engaged in Karma Yoga are of 3 types. Okay. Those who have controlled their intelligence are called as Vishuddhatma. Those who have controlled their minds are Vijitatma. And those who have controlled their senses are Jitendriya. The order of superiority is from the last to first. Okay. So one who has controlled intelligence is the best. One who has controlled his mind is second best. One who has controlled his senses is third best. So only senses third, senses and mind second, senses, mind, and intelligence is the best. Okay. All the jivas are attracted to such a grihastha. Why such a grihastha? Because kurvan yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitama jitendriyah sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvan api na lipyate. So kurvan means he is engaging in nishkama karma yoga. So that is why nishkama karma yoga means by default grihastha. There is no performance of nishkama karma yoga by a sannyasi or anyone else, right? External sannyasi, right? So his body is the object of love for all the living entities because of his internal detachment and selflessness. Any quick discussion points, comments, questions before we move forward? Okay, if there is none, we will continue our discussion. Then Krishna continues. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavit pashyan shrenvan sprashan jifran ashna gachan swapan swashan pralapan visirjan grinan unmishan nimishan api indriyani indriyarteshu vartanta iti dharayan. So he says, yuktaha, the person engaged in karma yoga, okay, tattvavit, having knowledge. What knowledge does he have? Indriyani indriyarteshu vartanta iti dharayan. He very clearly understands that the senses alone are interacting with the sense objects. Indriyani indriyarteshu vartanta iti dharayan. He understands that it is only the senses which are engaged in the sense objects. Okay. While Pashyan, Shrinvan, Sprishan, Jighan, Ashnan. While hearing, while seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating. Okay. These are the actions of the Jnanendriyas. Okay. And Gachan, Swapan, Swashan. Okay. Going, sleeping, breathing, Pralapan, Visirjan, Granan. Speaking, excreting, and receiving. Okay. These are the actions of the Karmendriya, except for sleep and breathing, which are activities governed by the pranas. So opening and closing eyes are representative of the 5 secondary pranas. So there are 5 primary pranas and the 5 secondary pranas. So the secondary pranas are Kurma, Krikara, Devadatta, Dhananjaya, and these are involved in opening the eyes, closing the eyes, yawning, belching, and all of that is also controlled by the secondary pranas. The primary pranas are prana, apana, samana, vyana, and udana. They control, inhale, exhalation, and all those primary things are controlled by the 5 primary pranas. And then the secondary bodily functions are also controlled by the 5 secondary pranas. Okay. So some of the activities are the activities of the Jnaniyas. Some of the activities are activities of the Karmendriyas. Some of the activities are activities of the pranas. Okay. So Pashyan, Shenman, Sprishan, Jighan, Ashnan. These are the Jnanendriyas activities. Gachan, Swapan, Swashan. Sorry, Swapan. Swapan and Swashan are activities of the prana. Okay. But Gachan, Pralapan, Visirjan, Grannan, these 4 are the activities of Karmendriyas. Unmishan, Nimishan, opening and closing of the eyes are activities of the secondary pranas. Okay. In all these things, in engaging in all these, the person engaged in Karma Yoga of type 2, Nishkama Karma Yoga type 2, he very clearly understands that the soul has nothing to do. It is only the senses which are engaging with the sense objects. Naiva kinchit karomi iti manyeta. Iti manyeta. He understands that na eva kinchit karomi. I am not doing even anything. I, the soul, I am not involved in anything. In all these actions, it is either my karmendriyas or gyanendriyas or my prana, which is engaged in the sense object. I am not doing anything. So with this understanding, he remains detached. With this understanding, he remains detached. Okay. So here, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, the Lord teaches the method by which one is not contaminated by actions. So why Nishkama Karma Yogi type 2 is not contaminated by actions? Because it was mentioned, so I will write it here. Why Nishkama Karma Yogi type 2 is not contaminated by actions? Because his actions are, because he does not have false ego, because his actions are not triggered by false ego. So he has true ego. Very clearly he identifies with the self as the soul. He very clearly sees that in all these actions where the senses are coming in touch with the sense objects, it is just an interaction between the senses and the sense objects. I, the soul, I am not doing anything. So he has this realized knowledge. Therefore, he is nirdvandva. He has no dualities, likings and dislikings. Likings and dislikings are not there because he is not identifying with the sense. Right. So, therefore, his actions do not generate any karma. Okay. So he says, although the karma yogi is engaged in seeing and other actions by verifying with his intelligence that the senses alone are engaged in the sense objects, he thinks, I am doing nothing at all. Okay. I am doing nothing at all, so I don't get contaminated. So that's why the previous verse it was mentioned, Sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvan api na lipyati. Therefore, though he is engaged in his activities of karma, he is not contaminated by that. That is what is described in this. So in this 18th, sorry, this 8th and 9th verse. Okay, can you please ask this question verbally? We will pause here. If there are any questions, you can please go ahead. Yes, Purushottam Prasad.
Prabhuji, Dandatna. So Krishna also says in BG 327, Ahankara Vimudatma Kartaham iti manyate. So that verse and this verse is almost correlated. So
yeah,
I'm trying to capture what is the core essence of these two verses. So one has to act without false ego. How a Jnani point of view and a Bhakta point of view, how we have to understand these two verses, Prabhuji.
see, these two verses are not instructions. These two verses are sims. Okay. So if one has fever, the fever has symptoms. What are the symptoms? Ahankara vimudatma karta aham iti manyate. That's symptom. And what is the symptom of a healthy person? Indriyarteshu vartanta iti dharayan. Naiva kinchit karomi iti. I am not doing anything. It is only the indriyas are engaging with the sense objects. Okay. So these are not normative verses. These are not instructions. This is the symptom. A symptom of a person who is controlled by false ego. He is 3.27. And the person who is not under the control of the false ego is 5.8, 5.9, or even 3.28. I think 3.28 is Tattvavittu Mahabaho Gunakarma Vibhagayoho. Guna Guneshu Vartanta iti matva na sajjate. Exact same meaning. 3.28 and 5.8 and 9 have the same meaning, because both the verses are talking about a person who is completely on the platform of jnana and who has transcended the platform of false ego. So, what do the devotees have to learn this? The devotees can learn what are the symptoms of transcending the false ego, and they can evaluate whether they have transcended or not. Only that much. This is not a normative verse. This is just a verse which is describing the symptoms. That's all.
If that is the case, our acharyas gave this path, Bhakti Yoga, and especially Prabhupada, engaging our senses, body, mind, and intelligence in a perfect way. And you know, the Jivatma gradually can release from all this false ego, etc., etc. The cleansing process takes place so profoundly, Prabhuji.
True.
Very
So there is a difference here. Actually, in this gradual path, you know, this one point I just wanted to, because you asked this question, so I will just try to draw a connection between this gradual path and the I will just add one more slide here to illustrate this point little bit. So just give me 1 second. Okay, so here you have two paths. You have the gradual path, okay, and then you have the path of bhakti. Okay, in the gradual path, you know, the person starts out with the identity. The identity of the person is I am the enjoyer. Okay, so this is false ego. Okay, so he starts out with this identity that I am the enjoyer. So then what does the gradual path say? They say, yes, we agree you are the enjoyer. Okay, but you are the enjoyer as you are the Varna and Ashrama. You are the enjoyer as a Brahmana, and you are the enjoyer as a Grihastha. Okay, so you are the enjoyer. Enjoy, no problem, right? So, but you are the enjoyer as a Brahmana and a Grihastha. So there is an identity in terms of Varna, and there is an identity in terms of Ashrama. Both are also false ego only. So, right, both are also false ego. So what it does is, first he is on the bodily platform. That bodily platform is not denied. That bodily platform is first enforced. Yes, you are this body, and you are a Brahmana, and you are a Grihastha, and the enjoyer. You enjoy as a Brahmana and you enjoy as a Grihastha. So rather than a vague identity as an enjoyer, he gets a very fixed identity as a Brahmana and a Grihastha. But what is the purpose of the Vedas giving this kind of identity, which is also false? Because by giving this identity, along with giving him a false identity, also give him duties. Okay, this is the means of regulation. This false ego becomes the means of regulation. And these duties are done in such a way that these duties can purify. Okay, so they say that yes, you are the enjoyer, but you are the enjoyer of a Brahmana and a Grihastha. Then he says, yes, I am the enjoyer as a Brahmana and a Grihastha. I will enjoy. They say, okay, enjoy. But enjoy, but you also have duties of a Brahmana and duties of a Grihastha. Okay. So perform the duties and enjoy. This is Sakama Karma Yoga. So when they perform, so they have received a false ego. And all these 10 types of samskaras, Dashavida samskaras, what do? They reinforce the false ego.
Oh.
Okay. They reinforce the false ego. That is why all these samskaras are according to one's varna and ashrama. So whichever samskara that you do, it will reinforce. Yes, you are a Brahman. You are a brahmachari. You are a grihastha. All these Dashavidha samskaras, starting from Garbhadana samskara, in the traditional Vedic system, I am not talking about the adapted version that devotees may follow. Okay. So in the traditional Varnashrama system, what is Garbhadana samskara? When a Brahmana male and a Brahmana female come together and perform certain kind of rituals in order to attract a Brahmana soul as their child. That is Garbhadana samskara. But when devotees perform Garbhadana samskara, we are not trying to attract Brahmana child. We are just trying to get a devotee child, right? Irrespective of whether he has Brahmanical inclination, whatever, right? So these Dashavida samskaras, they reinforce the false ego. So when they reinforce the false ego, along with the reinforcement of the false ego, the duties are also reinforced. He becomes very attached to the duties, and the duties are designed in such a way that it purifies that person. And when he becomes purified of this, then he slowly comes to the platform of Nishkama Karma Yoga, where he becomes this enjoyer tendency becomes refined. Okay. And he comes to true ego. I am not this body. I don't want any bodily enjoyment. I just want liberation. Okay. So, and then by practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga, when the anarthas within the heart are purified, then he comes to the path of Jnana, and then he achieves liberation. If you see the gradual path, it actually first, it from a very vague false ego identity as an enjoyer. First, this gradual path gives a very fixed false ego identity as a Brahmana, Grihastha, Kshatriya, etc. And then first it fixes the false ego through these samskaras, and then gradually through these varnashrama duties, it purifies that person and eventually transcends the false ego. It helps one transcend the false ego to come to that platform of true ego, and from there he attains liberation. So this is the gradual path. But if you see the path of bhakti, okay, if somehow one comes, if a jiva comes in touch with devotees and accumulates agyata sukriti over many lifetimes, and he reaches the stage of Shraddha, then that devotee starts on the platform of true ego.
Wow.
Even though there may be enjoying tendency in the heart, but he will see that enjoying tendency as an anartha.
Yeah.
Right? So what does, when a devotee comes to the stage of Adav Shraddha? Okay. So a beginner devotee, a Kanishta devotee, when he comes to the stage of Shraddha, what actually changes? Is it that immediately his material desires will vanish? No.
No.
but how he perceives those material desires, that will change. He
Definitely.
will no longer perceive those material desires as goals. He will start perceiving those material desires as anarthas. And that anartha nivritti may be slow, when he progresses from that to sadhu sangha to bhajana kriya to anartha nivritti, nishtha, ruchi, asakti, bhava, prema. So there is gradual anartha nivritti, but one should understand that he starts with on the platform of true ego, a devotee.
Yes.
Therefore, the first thing that we hear is Naham Vipro, Nacha Narapati, Napi Vaishyo na Shudro, Naham Varni, Nacha Grihapati, Na Vanasto Yatirva, Kintu Prodyan Nikila Paramananda Purnamritabde, Gopi Bhartur Padakamaleo Das Dasanudas. How many times we have heard this from Prabhupada?
Yes.
Again and again and again and again. So right from the beginning, how many times Prabhupada has told that you are Kshatriya, you are Brahmana? No.
Never. Yeah.
The very first beginning only, for the beginner level teaching only for devotees, there is the platform of true ego. Okay. So therefore, while the 10 samskaras reinforce the false ego, for us, the 64 limbs
Of bhakti.
Okay.
Yes.
of devotional service, they reinforce the true ego.
Mm.
Okay. And then whatever further anarthas are there will be anartha nivritti will be further accomplished by further practice of the 64 limbs.
Yeah.
That's all. So there is this difference between so therefore, you cannot always draw exact parallels between. So the reason why I am discussing this here is because we cannot always draw exact parallels between the descriptions of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga and actually Bhakti Yoga. Because because practically Karma Yoga is on the platform of false ego. Bhakti is on the platform of true ego, right from the beginning, right from Adav Shraddha. It is on the platform of true ego, actually. Even though, if you see, a Nishkama Karma Yogi may be at a significantly purified stage, and the Bhakti Yogi may be in the very beginning level with hardly any purification, heart filled with lot of material desires. But still, he is on the platform of true ego.
Mm.
So now you may say, if he is on the platform of true ego, why is he seen to engage in sense gratification?
That is another
He is seen to engage in sense gratification because he is responding to his anarthas and not to his faith. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is the difference, actually.
So that's it. Prabhupada writes, for a devotee, though is having in a subtle level the sense enjoyment, still is like a toothless snake. It has no harms, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a toothless snake because a devotee engaging in a forbidden activity due to the influence of the anarthas will not generate karma, due to which will decide his next birth. So his next birth due to karma is not decided based on the devotee engaging in some forbidden activity. His next birth will be decided by Krishna.
Okay. So in the Bhakti platform, right from the beginning, I am not the enjoyer, I am an eternal servitor of Krishna. The soul understands that theoretically, even though not practically.
Theoretically, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super. Thanks a lot.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Ramacharya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, you answered some of that here, but I heard in one of the lecture, and I would like to get that clarified and confirmed from you. In one of the lecture, I heard that some part of the Niskam Karma Yoga is Bhakti Yoga. And I was just going through some of the slides and discussion that we had in past, where you mentioned that both in Sakam Karma Yoga and Niskam Karma Yoga, the prescribed duty is Varnashram activity. And then Sakam is for sense gratification and Niskam Karma Yoga is for purification or liberation. So looking at that definition, I'm not seeing that Niskam Karma Yoga at any point is Bhakti Yoga. So how you'd like to help me understand that part?
No, I did not say in Nishkama Karma Yoga, there will be some element of bhakti. It is primarily karma only, but there will be some element of bhakti. You know, there will be some worship of the Lord. There will be some deity worship. Such things will be there. But ultimately, it is mostly karma only. And that bhakti is just a secondary part of their practice. But ultimately, their practice is karma only. And that just because they practice that small element of bhakti, that does not mean they are on the platform of true ego. That practice of bhakti is also not on the platform of true ego. But nevertheless, there is a limb of bhakti there.
Like we talk about Pradhan Bhuta Bhakti, Guna Bhuta Bhakti, and Kevalya Bhakti type of concept. Oh,
the same thing. Karma Yoga,
Okay.
Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga is Guni Bhuta, where bhakti is secondary. Karma Mishra Bhakti, Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Yoga Mishra Bhakti is Pradhani Bhuta, where bhakti is primary, whereas Karma Jnana Yoga is secondary. And there is Shuddha Bhakti.
oh, yeah, Prabhuji, that's very clear now. Dandavat, thank you.
Right. Anything else before we move forward? Okay. So here, Krishna is telling why the second type of Nishkama Karma Yogi, even though he may be engaged in actions of Varna, why is he not contaminated by those actions? Because Naivachit Karomi iti Manyeta. Because he thinks he is not the doer. Indriyani Indriyarteshu Vartanta iti Dharayan. Because he very clearly understands that it is only the senses which are interacting with the sense objects. And I, the soul, I am not doing. That is why he is called as Tattvavit. And the same words, the same phrase Tattvavit comes in 3.28. Tattvavittu Mahabaho Gunakarma Vibhago Guna Guneshu Vartanta iti Matvana Sajjate. Guna Guneshu Vartanta is the same as Indriyani Indriyarteshu Vartanta iti Dharayan. Same meaning, exactly same meaning. Guna Guneshu Vartanta iti Matva na Sajjate. Okay. So na Sajjate was mentioned already in the previous verse. Right? Kurvan api na lipyate. Na lipyate na Sajjate. Same meaning. So 3.28 is the same as 5.789 put together. 5.789, it's little bit elaborated. 3.28 is in a very short form. The same thing is mentioned. It is the same because it's talking about the same person, one who by practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga has purified his heart and has come to the platform of true ego. So because he has now transcended the platform of true false ego and come to the platform of true ego, therefore, kurvanapi na lipyate, he is not actually this thing. So therefore, one thing I again wanted to mention. So as I mentioned, the Dashavida samskaras, they reinforce the false ego. That is why these 10 types of samskaras, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, are not mandatory for devotees. Definitely not in the same form. Because in the same form, it reinforces the false ego. So therefore, the kind of Garbhadana samskar and all that we do, we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But in the traditional Vedic system, they don't chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. They would have some other practice which will invite a Brahmana soul or a Kshatriya soul as their child. But in bhakti, we practice some, we may chant 64 rounds or whatever, but it is just a devotional adaptation, right? It is just a devotional adaptation. Okay. And it does not guarantee essentially that you will get a devotee soul only as your child. There is no 100% guarantee like that, right? And we don't care. It's okay. As Vaishnavas, if you get devotee child, we nourish that devotee child's devotion by taking care of that child. If you get a non-devotee child, we again give that child very good devotional experience so that the child accumulates lot of Ajnata Sukriti, and maybe later he will become a devotee. So for a devotee, if he begets a devotee child or a non-devotee child, in one sense, it's the same, because as devotees, don't we go out and preach to non-devotees to make them devotees? We do, right? And when a non-devotee becomes a devotee, don't we become happy? We become happy. So then won't we become happy if our own child, which happened to be a non-devotee, gradually by our giving them an opportunity to accumulate a lot of Ajnata Sukriti through favorable experiences, if they become devotees, won't we become happy? We become happy. So devotees feel happy in trying to help devotees practice better also, and they also become happy in trying to preach to new people. So if one of those new people happens to be your own son or daughter, then what is the problem? One can definitely preach to them, give them good experience, growing up in Krishna consciousness, so that they accumulate a lot of Ajnata Sukriti and eventually become devotees, like that. Okay. So it's 9:30, so we will pause here and we will continue this discussion next week, next Friday. So thank you all very much for your patient listening and your enthusiastic participation. We will continue this discussion next Friday. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Vishnu Thakur Pad ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.